What's up, adventurers, and welcome to a new ShawnSetGO video. This one is on one of those controversial topics that I'm hesitant to weighing in on, just because, in my opinion, I don't think that validation of this or criticism of this should come from me, but I think I can at least talk about the topic and give my thoughts on it to kind of leave it open ended to yourself as far as what you think is the best option for yourself. So I'll give my opinion on what I think about it, but it's not to be like you have to think this way, but more of just choose as you see fit. And that is, I mean, this has been known for some time now, but that is the Khadgar wheelchair representation. And so the original post that kind of spurred this conversation is all the magic in the world and you need to conjure this. Of course, Reddit immediately attacked this, saying, we know Khadgar uses a wheelchair because it was made by Pandering. Sure, he could use a floating magical pillow or something, but he just used it as a gift made for him, and the inclusivity is nice to see. You can discuss lore relevancy, but basically saying if you're turning it to be any like rude about people in wheelchairs or making jokes about where disability is a punchline, grow up. Of course, my honest opinion of it is like, this is like the fragility explained, is like, why not discuss the people who make the jokes about it? If you're really offended about it, about maybe why they have such a problem with it, allow the discussion to happen. But of course, Reddit, in the way it does, always just likes to police versus allowing the discussion to happen, and it kind of cuts things off there. A lot of positivity in this forum, and I'm not saying that positivity shouldn't happen. But the reason why this kind of like bothered me a bit was, I mean, like going into it, I mean, if you look at a lot of these responses, a lot of them are saying, you know, in all the world of, you know, magic, you know, why create a wheelchair? Like, why is it basically an arcane wheelchair? Someone says, well, it could be basically dispelled. So like at any point, just vulnerable in that kind of way. So, so that doesn't help. And then, and on top of that, you know, when you have mechanomes who could make these things, like, why not just allow these things that already exist in the world be created, instead of just going, no, we're going to insert a wheelchair. So a lot of valid arguments, I think, in that, but at the same time, I don't want to be like, WoW isn't in a position currently to handle something like this, but it does feel like at certain times when they try to place arguments like this into the game, it does feel very inserted, like purposefully inserted. And so something I wanted to talk about, maybe being like a possible that could turn this into a positive maybe later down the road. I'll talk about at the end here, but I do have some maybe possible theories. But to kind of give you an idea of who made this for him, I mean, this is Pandering, Archmage Pandering, so who made it for him. So I mean, maybe explain some things. But just talking about disability in the game, of course, the first argument that came up was having the shield for Farron Lothar, or Farron Lothar. So obviously, people talk about functionality and that the weight of the shield being too heavy. If, of course, having no natural pivot point, not even in a brace at the bottom of it, so it's very heavy on the shoulder. And they even explain it in the actual the Stale While and Listen, where basically she says that our veterans will lose an arm to Nerubians. We'll be very grateful for your designs. Basically, the Dawn Cavalier saying, why not I just make something like a prosthetic for you? And saying that basically her reasoning was that she lived her life without having a prosthetic, and so having it now, I guess, would be too weird, but also would kind of lose a bit of the value. So it's a bit of a personal choice, and I get that. But even saying that basically my personal choice puts a lot of weight and pain on my shoulder, and I need a better shock absorber. So saying that basically, like, obviously this if you ignore the functionality of it, even still, the choice that she's made has been negatively affecting her, to the point where a prosthetic would, of course, alleviate that. But are we willing to make the transition whenever say someday that the perfect prosthetic exists, would you give this person a prosthetic, or would that be a criticism for people for basically being able-bodied by having prosthetics? Because there is a division within the disability community where things like prosthetics or using items to basically avoid the main aspect of the disability is a limiting factor. This goes for people who are deaf who get cochlear implants. It goes with prosthetics. So can the same be said about this exact situation? I can't quite tell, because I mean, he could simply just be recovering from this. But if you listen to, of course, the aspect of the text and what he's saying, it seems like it may be permanent. So let's listen for a second.
Into pure arcane energy.
And allowed yourself to be trapped within the dark heart.
Yes, until you freed me.
That was a risky move, trusting me to finish the fight against Xal'atath.
I knew you would do whatever it took to defeat her, just like all those years ago, when we charged through the dark portal and closed it behind us to save our world. Both then and now, placing my faith in you was never any risk at all. That transmutation spell, however, that was not without consequences. You know, Khadgar keeps saying I should just ride a griffin around. That seems terribly inconvenient, if you ask me. I much prefer this chair.
Could that be because Archmage Modera designed it for you herself?
Basically, this devolves into him having the hots for the person who made the wheelchair for him. So be it. That's totally fine. But I did find it ironic because, thinking back, that there are characters who have had missing limbs or disabilities before that I don't think maybe got the same criticisms as before, and that being Zul'jin. Zul'jin, one of the coolest characters, and also one of those characters that it's like if you're either one side or the other on them as a character, either that they did nothing wrong or that they burned too many bridges. And of course, if you don't know Zul'jin, the main thing with Zul'jin is that at some point during the war, he allied with the Horde, Orgrim Doomhammer, and to go basically face the High Elves. But when Orgrim Doomhammer decided to change that alliance and go, well, our initial fight wasn't against the High Elves, it was instead to fight the humans. That alliance was basically shattered. And ironically, towards the end of this, whenever that alliance was broken and he realized that like no one's gonna fight my vengeance for my people, they just want to fight their own battles, and then they just want to use me for war. He mysteriously disappeared. So Zul'jin mysteriously disappeared. Most believed he died under the hail of Illyria Windrunner's arrows, which, I mean, this is just this was later changed, but I just find it funny that she's in this situation. Everyone she's surrounded by gets almost killed, but come to find out he had actually been captured, tortured, losing his right eye, and then was attacked later, when the band was attacked later. He escaped by cutting off his own arm, but then the question rose, wait, why didn't you just recover? So a similar parallel situation to Khadgar here, why not just float around? Why not just use magic to fix this? Why is it such a problem? Why do you need to be in a wheelchair right now? So they're just kind of explaining that a bit, and going back into it. There's a lot of theories. People say that he basically isn't right with his Loa. There's a portion here. There's portions here throughout World of Warcraft that were retconned, but basically, if you don't know, troll generation has been subject to inconsistencies over the years and has fluctuated in terms of strength and whether it has natural or a blessing from the Loa. So people saying, well, he had focused a battle on vengeance, and that's why he was in bout with the Loa, so that's why he couldn't recover. And then some were saying that so you can see here it says all trolls were blessed by the Loa with some regeneration. They could regrow fingers and toes. even if it more complex parts like limbs and organs were beyond their abilities. So maybe like a full limb wasn't possible, but my point in this, I mean, you can read a little bit more about this if you want to. You could pause the video, but basically it's very inconsistent as far as what all can be done all the time. So I mean, if you're going to say like this is something that's normal and it is fine within the lore, and using prosthetics and stuff like that isn't always a catch-all, I think you have a right to say that. I think you could say like even for characters that effectively have limb regeneration, it's not necessarily a catch-all. It may not happen every single time. Maybe it was cauterized. Maybe they knew that trolls could regenerate. It's not really explained, and a lot of things in lore are retconned kind of sloppily in the game. So like I want to be fair, and I want to be open to the idea, but I also had a theory. So something that had come up was basically when we talk about Khadgar and his position as being originally an apprentice under Medivh, and Medivh himself being a guardian of Tirisfal. For those of you who haven't looked into it, there's a little bit of lore that explains basically a position was given to one person to protect against demons, and during Legion, a lot of this kind of came to fruition of the importance of this, but for those of you who already know or probably are familiar with this, Khadgar rejected this position after taking it. So there is no longer a active guardian in this case. Now, this is more in direction of demons and of course the Legion expansion. So I can't necessarily say that this is a full-on connection to this, but without a guardian, so the Khadgar isn't the guardian, the position is vacant. He rejected that role at the start of Legion. Instead, he helped revive Tirisgard, headed by the player mage. So is this all a sort of retcon, but like also maybe like a bringing back of the falling back of Khadgar as like this constant character who helps the player more active in a more active role, and him stepping back into his role as guardian? Could this be sort of the thing that's like basically this is the event that has happened that is too severe and no longer it like will I be the best mage out there, you know, like there's plenty of other mages, you know, Jaina, and you know, Kalek, Ashara, Belisara, like they no longer do I hold the title. I'm taking a step back and going into my official role, or like a way to kind of just like write him out of the story in a sort of way like that. But my point with all this and why I think that this is not the representation that it claims to be, and like this whole Reddit post about, you know, like we can't talk anything about this about it being negative. I don't think this represents what people intended to represent simply by it existing. I think that when we talk about representation in video games for disabilities, we should think about games in which we have an option to represent, and then giving that representation something that gives people with disabilities the ability to say, hey, I'm not just my disability. I don't think putting somebody in a wheelchair is representation. I think that if you have that person who has a permanent disability, similar to this Farron Lothar character with the shield, if you have this person who has overcome their like what they're able to do with the disability, but also they take pride in it, and they found a way to work things around daily life. Those are ways you can say representation are effectively being used in the game, because in those ways the person is not just their disability, but they're a person who does things in different ways, maybe with exceedingly more challenge. And I think where people fall off isn't necessarily disability, and I think people who disagree, like, why put him in a wheelchair, and I think that people immediately label them as ableist, and I think that's unfortunate. I don't think we should, or like we should call those people discriminatory, because in reality, like, they're not doing that. It's just that it just seems clunky. It seems like it's being inserted. It seems like we're putting it in place of something to check a box, but not really put any extra work behind it. So I think there are examples of disability representation in World of Warcraft that are badass, that are cool, that are like, maybe even still don't have a lot of explanation or were retconned to hell. But at the same time, just putting someone in a wheelchair doesn't equal representation. And I'm kind of exhausted personally by being like, oh no, we have to protect this 100%. No, we can still criticize it and go, well, I think if you're gonna do it this way, then maybe don't make the wheelchair float. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense, because then why do you have wheels? So it's a ground mount, in a flying mount as well. I guess. Personally, if you like it, you dislike it, it's whatever. But my personal thoughts on this isn't gonna be like the determiner or the moral high ground on this. I don't think I have the moral high ground or the understanding to go like, oh, this is the best representation, or this is what we should see 100%. For the most part, it just seems like when they had the grab bag of how do we bring this character back, they put the old guy in the wheelchair, because like that was the one they pulled out of the hat. That's what it feels like whenever you have so many more options to me, which are much more viable, especially because they exist in the game. Like the active prosthetics exist in the game. So that's my thoughts with it. Of course, lore can fix a lot and explain a lot, and I go, okay, I get it. Like the Farron Lotar thing, maybe I think it should functionally work differently, because shoulders can't shift forward that aggressively, at least I don't think, to block proper. But if it was slightly adjusted and changed a little bit, I bet, yep, perfect. Like the lore makes sense, the item makes sense. That's it. Like functionality to me is over everything else, because if it's functionally okay, then whatever. And yes, Zul'jin, like him not recovering his arm or doing anything to recover it, is a badass character. So what who am I to say? Like I don't care. It's just cool. So like, all right, cool factor. That kind of that explains it for me. So I don't need a lot. But to me, not having anything and just being like, all right, wheelchair, that doesn't equal representation. It just doesn't. There's no way you could say that it's just like, oh yeah, we gotta protect it and keep it safe. It's like, no, criticize it so it's better. That way people don't have this one size fits all approach to it when they see it in game. That way, when we see it again or we see it more, we're more comfortable with it, as opposed to immediately reject it or get rejected by all the people who are like, well, no, we must protect it. You're discriminatory and you're the problem. It doesn't help anything. And all it does, it just creates two separate echo chambers of people who don't talk to each other. And that's all it does. But anyways, what do you think of this? What do you think of representation, disability representation in the game? Do you think it needs to be changed, modified? How do you think it needs to be changed? And what are some good examples that you think that exist that you think could maybe be something they could go by? But thank you once again for watching the video. Hope you liked it. Subscribe to the page. And of course, we will start up streams again pretty soon. We've been on break while I've been traveling, but until then, I appreciate all the support that you guys have been giving to this YouTube page. And as per always, I'll catch you in the next one.